Hello, I'm here to talk to you about our final project. My name is Kate, and I worked on this final project in collaboration with our classmate Karen Lusnia. Karen teaches English in Mexico City, and I teach Spanish in the United States. So we collaborated and did two different projects for our students to work on together. One project that you see here is Fashion in Mexico City, Moda en el DF, and the other is Animals in the United States. I'll give you a bit of a caveat about this before getting into the Moda en el DF module. We would have our students collaborating throughout the semester. They'll speak to each other in Spanish and in English about topics that they're learning about in class. So my students of Spanish at the University of Minnesota already will have partners of Karen's in Mexico City, and they'll get together every couple weeks and talk. So they already know their partners, and they're doing this collaboration as part of their coursework. So some of the instructions I give in my module are a little bit sketchy because the students already know what to do. So the instructions are not as explicit as they would be the very first time they get the information. So without further ado, let's look at Fashion in Mexico City. This is all in Spanish because I plan to use this fall, but I will translate for you. Expedition overview. We want the students to learn about fashion in Mexico City and then recommend some designs that they think would be successful in the United States. And our questions are, how is fashion in Mexico different than fashion in Minneapolis? Just to compare and contrast, learn more about Mexico and then compare it with what you already know about the United States. Expedition location, down in Mexico City. And now, the first thing students do is that I would like them to reflect about what they know already about fashion. And the students begin by taking this quiz, which is just a fun, lighthearted quiz. How would you describe how you dress? Are you sporty? Are you hippie? Are you modern? Are you preppy? Grunge? Gothic? Whatever's clean in your closet. Where do you buy your clothes? How often do you buy clothes? How many pairs of jeans do you have? How much would you pay for a pair of jeans? What are your favorite brands? What are your favorite types of shoes? Do you dress the same on the weekend and weekdays? Why or why not? So this quiz is designed so that students think a bit about their own habits, and a lot of students honestly have not put much thought into why they dress the way they dress. After students have thought about their own habits, now we want them to learn more about Mexico. So bear in mind, students have already learned about clothing in their textbook. They know the words for shirt and shoes, but they don't know much about Mexican fashion in particular. So I'm sending them to the web page for Bershka, and I want them to look around there and then also look at the jeans page. What would they find out? There we go. So here's Bershka. Students are going to have to look around themselves and find the jeans. Not too hard to translate that from English into Spanish. Jeans. So this is actually the sale page, and they can see boyfriend jeans cost 229 Mexican dollars. Discount mom jeans. Oh dear Lord, mom jeans with the high waist. Also $229. So students can look around there a bit and become familiarized with clothing in Mexico. And then we want them to compare. How is the Bershka page similar to the Macy's page? How is it different? I want the students to find these jeans, pitillo rotos, They cost $599 Mexican dollars. What is that in US dollars? Students can also go deeper and look at these other important Mexican clothing stores. And then students have homework. They need to write 1 or 2 paragraphs comparing the clothes from Bershka, Zara, or the other important stores with the clothes from Macy's. Would you like any of the clothing from Bershka or Zara? They need to hand in this essay in class. So that's the second part of their journey. Now they can read about the 5 bloggers fashionistas, direct translation into English. Here they can find out more about the famous bloggers in Mexico. They look like they could very much be bloggers in the US. And now, the third part of their adventure is it's time to talk with their partner in Mexico. So my students would be partnered with Karen's students. They've already conversed, and the students have already decided on the best way to talk. Some of them like Skype, some of them like FaceTime, some of them like Google Hangout, but they already have a form of synchronous conversation between the two of them that they can use to talk about. And they need to ask their partner the same questions that they ask themselves. What's your style of dressing? Where do you buy your clothes? What are your favorite brands? Maybe the Mexican students like brands that the Americans have never heard of. So they need to talk for a half hour, and they can talk about fashion. They need to talk about fashion. They can also talk about whatever other topic interests them. The Americans initiate the conversation in Spanish. The Mexican students will initiate conversation in English. So they'll split their time equally between the conversations. However, going back to fashion, the students need to write some notes about what they learned during their conversation with their partner. And now, the fourth step, Flipgrid Moda. The students will orally do a summary of what they learned with their classmates. What did you learn about Mexican clothing or Mexican clothing habits? Is your partner more interested in clothing than you are, or is it the other way around? What brands are popular in Mexico? Have you heard of these brands before? What was the most interesting thing about your conversation with your partner? And so students will go to the Flipgrid. They will see my smiling face, and they will record their summary here in 90 seconds or less. So students have just talked to their partners, and they have recorded a Flipgrid of their conversation with their partner and what they learned. Now it's time to get the experts involved. So now in the fifth step, we want the students to watch these videos with 2 young fashionistas in Mexico, and we have 2 different playlists from these fashionistas. Both are men, interestingly, and we have YouTube channels where the students can watch all of these videos about themes related to clothing. So here we have Alejandro Ramirez. He's a student and a fashion employee. He's talking about things like, how did you become interested in fashion? What fashion trends are popular or hot in Mexico City right now? Why is clothing so expensive in Mexico? Who dictates the fashion trends in Mexico City? What type of clothing do university students wear now? And this is very interesting, what makes Mexican fashion unique? What would it be? So that's one of our playlists with Alejandro. The next one is with Vicente, who's another young fashionista. What would you recommend to a foreign person who wants to get to know Mexican clothing? How did you become interested in clothing? At what age? Do you think that everyone has their own fashion? So many different examples here, all of it in Spanish, and all of it with students who would be peers of our university students. So wonderful, authentic listening for our students. After watching and listening to these interviews, now it's time for the Americans to talk to the experts. Here we have another Flipgrid, and I'm asking our students, what questions do you have for Alejandro or Vicente about clothing? Think of one question for each of the experts. Ask the question here, and the idea is that Alejandro or Vicente would respond to the students in this forum. So part 7, this is when we're actually getting to the adventure. And now it's time for the Americans to make their own personal investigation. They've already found out about their own likes in terms of clothing. They've learned what their partners like. They've learned what's hot in Mexico. And now they need to recommend what type of clothing in Mexico would be popular in the US. And what item of clothing that you saw on the websites would you buy? Why? Do you think that Vicente or Alejandro would agree with your decision? And finally, what did you learn about Mexican fashion throughout this investigation? And the student's assignment is to write a one-page essay, single-spaced, that they will submit in class. They also will discuss this in class. So they will discuss this with each other, and then the instructor will have the chance to formally assess what they've learned. And finally, we have some nice pictures uploaded that Karen took at the mall in Mexico City, and there's nothing for students to do here other than virtually have a tour of the mall. Is it like the mall in the US? Is it not? This is an image from the Bershka website. So some additional background knowledge. So that's all. That's all for this expedition. Karen will tell you about our other expedition about animals in the US. I plan to use this fall, and I'm very excited to hear what the students have to say about it, and also what you have to say about it as well. Thanks.